Hi everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
So, hello and welcome everyone. I hope I'm clearly audible and visible to each one of you. So, today we have Mr. Venkat Ramana with us today. So, Mr. Venkat Ramana is a very senior and experienced person in the regulations domain. He is currently serving as a medical advisor at ICAT, Manesar, Haryana. His role at ICAT involves providing regulatory input for electromedical devices as well as for the automotive testing. He is a MS graduate from Tampere University in biomedical engineering. So he comes with a lot of experience in this particular field. He also has several certifications in the biomedical as well as the quality assurance sector, such as ISO 13485, risk management, EU MDR, which is the medical device regulations, biomedical equipment technology and maintenance, CDAC, as well as the radiation quality and radiation safety and quality assurance. He has contributed 4 publications, including a well-cited publications in the IEEE antennas and wireless propagation letters. So today's session will be on the EMC testing as well as the safety protocols for the electromedical devices. So we welcome you, sir, to this session, and we are very honored to have you here with us today at MICE. Over to you,
Uh,
sir.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, one and all. It's a pleasure to interact with the MICE community. And I have heard a lot about your incubator, which was kind of set up in a medical college. So I hope a lot of our maybe audience, there will be some medical students also. So it's, I think in India, it is a one of a kind initiative. So congratulations for that and for the dynamic leadership of MICE. And I will just briefly introduce the topic. So essentially, this is my institution. The topic today is the safety and the electromagnetic compatibility testing, but I will just try to encapsulate the entire regulatory pathway once. And so a bit brief about my organization. So I represent ICAT, which is International Center for Automotive Technology. This comes under National Automotive Testing and R&D Infrastructure Project (NATRIP), which falls under Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises. And since the beginning of COVID, ICAT has also entered into the domain of medical device testing. So essentially, ICAT does all the engineering tests relating to medical devices. And this is another thing even for the manufacturers also, or even it's very good to learn because most of the startups, when they are making electromedical products or medical devices, they will be searching for components. So the automotive sector is one area which can provide a lot of components and a lot of help in the fabrication and so on. For example, if someone is looking to make a ventilator, if they require some sort of pressure sensors or solenoids or different kinds of components, the automotive industry is a big source for that. And essentially, ICAT provides testing, validation, design, and homologation services, mainly for the automotive sector. And recently, we have, as I told, we have come into the medical device sector. So in this slide, I have tried to capture the entire medical device testing process overview. So am I audible to everyone? Abhishek, it's like, yeah, perfect. Thanks. So essentially, it's a complex sector, but if you can split it, there will be 3 kinds of testing. The first one are the engineering tests. Right, whatever that electrical engineer for like hardware, software, electrical, mechanical, thermal, EMC, so on and so forth. The next one is the biocompatibility and animal testing. So biocompatibility means something, if it is compatible with the body, that is biocompatible. So the most basic biocompatibility test is the cytotoxicity test, because if something is not toxic to the cell, it is biocompatible. Then the third and the final stage is the clinical trials. So specifically for an incubator located in a medical college, I believe in future you will be dealing mostly with the clinical trials. And for the clinical trials, there is the ISO standard is ISO 14155, and each country has its own regulations. Again, biocompatibility, you have got the entire ISO 10993 series of standards, and as well as animal testing is there. But my area of expertise, or rather the area of expertise of my institution, is mainly in the engineering tests. And One key thing to note is the medical device development process usually is a long one, and the more rigorous the engineering tests, if you perform rigorous engineering tests, you will in effect eliminate all the future problems which are coming in the clinical trial stage. That's the thing. And Here again, there is a bit of confusion, so I'm just clarifying. There are essentially two types of tests. The first tests are known as conformity assessment testing. That is what we do, which means one model of a particular product is being tested before being released into the market or before being approved for clinical trial. The second category of testing is the recurrent test, which you need to carry out after repair of a device. Let us say some ventilator is there in JJ hospital, and it has to be calibrated at certain period of time, and those tests are calibration related tests, and the equipment required and the training to the manpower and these things are slightly different for both of them. Most of the conformity assessment tests also involve destructive tests, such as high voltage test or electrostatic discharge, which kind of damage the device because they are single time tests. Now, if you will encounter a lot of people in regulatory, they have different ways of classifying the types of tests required for a medical device in its life cycle. So according to me, I have tried to group it into 14 different categories, right? I will just briefly elucidate about them one after another. The first test category is the electrical safety. And since I am focusing mainly on electromedical equipment or active medical devices, this means any device which uses electricity. So this is very important because otherwise you have to check for leakage currents or some sort of insulation parameters, because otherwise it can cause harm to the patients. So just like, see, if you see most of the devices such as cath labs or MRI machines, all of them are high voltage equipment. So if this electrical insulation is ignored, that can cause harm to both the patient as well as the user. And the patient is more critical because his immunity is already compromised. So we have got two kinds of protection, insulation protections are defined. The first one is known as the means of operator protection, and the second one is known as the means of patient protection, MOPP. And the very first thing which one does when making any electromedical device or some sort of a personal care device is to define these insulation parameters and make something which is known technically as an insulation diagram. So that is the first part. Second, we come to electromagnetic compatibility. Now, what is electromagnetic compatibility? So we are surrounded by electromagnetic radiation in our environment, RF radiation from our mobile phones to high tension wires to transformers to so on and so forth. So let us assume if someone has a pacemaker, for example, if he walks next to a transformer, the pacemaker should not stop, because this transformer will produce some sort of unwanted emissions, or high tension wire will produce unwanted emissions, so his pacemaker should not stop. Or if somebody is using a mobile phone next to a ventilator, then the ventilator should be able to withstand that electric field. So again, there are two types of electromagnetic compatibility tests. The first category is the radiated tests, means radiated emission or radiated immunity, where there is no like conductor involved. The second one is the conducted tests, like conducted immunity or conducted emissions, where you have some sort of a wire or a conductor. So if you can imagine, like if let us say some ECG machine is connected to the socket in our power supply, there are a lot of disturbances like transients or surges due to lightning or so on and so forth. So these have to be accounted for, or these have to be tested, and the device should be capable of withstanding these kind of tests. And the third category is the alarms. So most of you are from maybe I think a lot of MBBS students are there. So maybe in future when you do, let us say some of you may become anesthesiologists or pulmonologists, you will be handling a lot of ventilator and ICU equipment. In that case, one thing to be noted is the alarms for each and every medical device are very precisely defined by their pulse, defined by their melody, and defined by their burst, and so on and so forth. So that they are very critical. So they are essentially three types of alarms: high priority alarms, medium priority alarms, and low priority alarms. And the exact condition when that alarm should be generated is very strictly defined. Then the fourth category of tests are the actual performance tests. So again, I am taking the example, let us say some device, let's say again ventilator. So how do you check its performance? So you have to check it gives the oxygen level correctly, it gives the volume levels are correct, and the kind of pressures which are supposed to be shown have to be checked. So this is very important. So similarly, each device has a unique kind of performance testing equipment. So whenever you are trying to do or rather design a device or manufacture a device, one should have access to that equipment. So let us say one wants to make some sort of a wearable ECG, then they should have the ECG simulator. For ventilator, you have got the gas flow analyzer and the test lungs. For EEG, again, you have got the EEG analyzer. Similarly, each device has a unique kind of device. Each equipment has a unique kind of device. So for example, for a CT scan, right, there are specific phantoms which are used in computer tomography. They are known as the CTDI phantom. So you need not purchase those devices always. Most of those setups can be made in-house also. So for example, for X-ray phantoms, maybe a bucket of water can serve that as a phantom, but still one must have that. Either you build your own phantoms and your own calibration equipment, or you have to purchase them. Then the next category of tests are the environmental tests. So again, what is environment? So here environment means the kind of humidity where the device is operating, or the kind of altitude at which the device is operating. Because if you see carefully, if a ventilator is working in Mumbai, fine, it may be working fine in Mumbai, but when you take it to Ladakh, right, or Arunachal Pradesh, then it will start behaving in weird ways, because again that the temperature is different, and the humidity is different, and the so-called pressure, air pressure there is different, and so on. So if a device has to perform, let's say in air, then it has to be tested at that level of vacuum. And if a device has to perform well in space, then you need to create those conditions. So these are known as environmental tests, and they are very crucial. And otherwise what will happen is, so they are kind of mechanical tests. So environment means again humidity, temperature, vacuum, and you have got air pressure. Then you have got ingress protection. Ingress means there is water ingress or dust ingress. You are putting the device under certain kind of stress and then observing it. And these environmental tests are also very critical to define the protocols for something known as accelerated aging. This means if a device has to perform for 5 years or 10 years life, then you have to test it and simulate those conditions, because we cannot wait for 5 years. So we subject the device to some kind of environmental stress, and let's say they are test those devices at a shorter time period, but for the entire service life. Then the next topic is software. As you know, most of the devices nowadays are having some sort of other software. So again, the software life cycle and its a safety and is very critical. So that's part of test is there. So the standard for medical device software especially is IEC 62304. So it is similar to any other software testing, but there are certain unique like the customizations required. And the next category of tests is the optics or the photometry tests, because in medical devices there is a category known as IVDs, in vitro diagnostics. So where so for most of them are based on some sort of optical they are kind of some sort of optical devices based on some form of spectrophotometry and so on, like your all blood gas analyzers, or like things like that, or most of the clinical laboratory instrumentation. Then finally, I should have put this first. You come to this computer aided engineering validation, CAE validation. So it is not required for India, but the very first thing which US FDA or European CE looks before validating the device is they will ask whether this device has been simulated or not in a computer model or not. So like there are softwares such as ANSYS or COMSOL. Maybe Abhishek is laughing. He's mechanical engineer, or I think you have a lot of them, so they would have known that. So you first run it on the simulation. Then the next one is the quality management standard. So like every industry has its own quality management standard. Just like you have got, everyone would have heard about ISO 9001, which is a generic quality management standard. For medical devices, the standard is ISO 13485. It is useful for designers. Specifically, clause 7.3 is applicable for design and development, which will be very applicable for mice. And then for even for manufacturers, even for distributors, even for anyone dealing with medical device, somehow falls under ISO 13485 or its local deviation. Like in Europe, it is EN 13485, and there are corresponding in India, you have got ICMED 13485, and so on and so forth. Then the next standard is related to quality, but it is more related to risk. So most of the limits, the test limits in medical devices are risk based. So what is risk? Risk is essentially defined as the probability of harm multiplied by the severity of harm. So that is risk, and it has to be calculated. And this is again similar to some sort of financial risk management or the risk management while planning some sort of treatment method used by oncologists and so on. But the basics are similar. Then finally, the device mostly includes the packaging also. And packaging is very important both for pharmaceuticals and medical devices, because again, they have to be working under diverse conditions and they have to be transported. And the next category, next tests are related to usability engineering. So usability is kind of related to industrial design. So for example, what kind of user interface would be better for, let's say, when we are designing, again, let's say a syringe pump or so on and so forth. So here, this is one area where most of the doctors or the physicians or the paramedical professional, they can give their inputs, because it is ultimately either the physicians or the paramedical professionals who are, or the nurses who are going to use these devices. So their inputs are used in designing these usability studies. And the first study which you do initially is known as a formative usability test, and then you have got this summative usability test. So this also used in other areas, but in medical devices, the protocol is usually combined with the clinical trial for cost efficiency. Then, as I mentioned, it was biocompatibility, and the final one is the recurrent test after repair. So these 14 areas would come under these what is known as these general safety and performance requirements in the EU MDR terminology. So these, if a designer or a manufacturer takes into account, most of the hurdles in the regulatory process will be automatically taken care of, irrespective of the country or irrespective of the standard. That is just my personal view. So any doubts or any questions till now? Anyone has any questions? Or can I move ahead? Is it clear till now? So it's usually, it's, I think, a very
Yes,
diverse
sir.
audience. So that is why I should, I'm just asking if it is fine, right? Okay, thank you.
Hello, sir. I have one small doubt.
Yes,
Uh, Sir, so you were talking about CAE validation, where you have to present the simulation models for the testing
yes,
purposes.
yes.
So, and you also mentioned the testing of the ECG or EEG modules. So, how do we simulate the ECG modules?
CAE is mostly for mechanical oriented devices. So when specifically for ECG or EEG or wearable devices, what they can simulate, usually CAE is for devices like mostly where you have some sort of fluid dynamics involved, such as ventilators or syringe pumps and so on. For ECG, there is an ECG simulator and you have to test it there. That was under this performance test. So what I was mentioning was every device has some sort of performance testing protocol. So for an ECG, there are the device generates certain signals which are known for calibrating the ECG, and one has to. Basically it's a simulator, means it will kind of generate different kinds of signals. Let us say from adults or from neonates and so on and so forth. There is only one company which makes the device, and then there is again there are different types of simulators. One which are used for wearables, one which are used for a typical standard ECG. And the CAE validation, the standard specifically is made by ASME. It is ASME V&V 40. That is the device for verification and validation of the computational model, to check whether that computational model is, to verify and validate that computational model. The standard is ASME V&V 40, and that is the thing for the CAE model. So I hope I am clear. Or
Yes, sir. Thank you.
yeah. So I'll just move ahead. So I have just listed, okay, I'll just show first about something about electromagnetic compatibility testing. So what mainly at ICAT we do is the EMC tests. So we have covered certain devices with the ICAT logo just for confidentiality. So these EMC tests, specifically these radiated emissions and radiated immunity, they are performed in something known as a anechoic chamber or a semi-anechoic chamber. So in this chamber, essentially the floor is a perfectly reflecting surface, and in the walls and the roof you have got these RF absorbers. So essentially there is no radio frequency waves inside the chamber, like there is no radio frequency interference, so you can actually measure the kind of RF output which any device is generating. So here essentially these tests are done at a distance of 3 meter, 1 meter or 10 meter, depending upon the size of the device. So suppose you are designing any device which is larger than, let us say, 2 meter diameter, then you have to test it at 10 meter chamber or 10 meter distance. And since you cannot rotate the antenna, essentially the device is put on some sort of a rotating table, and the device is rotated to take the entire 360-degree measurement. And the data is analyzed in Fourier domain in a very specific device which is known as the EMI receiver, which is very akin to the spectrum analyzer which is used in the colleges. It's almost similar. And for this radiated immunity, the device is put in an electric field and at a particular frequency range, and there you check for its immunity. And so typically the standard is IEC 61000-4-3, and the electric field for radiated immunity for typical devices which are used in hospital environments is only 3 volts per meter. The limits are different for any device which is to be used in home care, which is about 10 volts per meter. And for certain critical care devices also, the limits are much more higher. So this is just the EMC chamber. And so these are again certain, there are about 11 or 12 key EMC tests. The first one is the electrostatic discharge. So you essentially have two types of ESD tests. There is an ESD gun, air discharge or contact discharge. So air discharge value is roughly close to 8 kV, and contact discharge is up to 15, no, contact discharge is up to 8 kV plus or minus 8 kV, and air discharge is up to plus or minus 15 kV. And electrostatic discharge is one of the most common tests which usually the device fails because it's not designed for that. The second is this power frequency magnetic field. I have already told about radiated immunity. Then to check for certain transients in our power supply, you have the test of electrical fast transient. And to check for lightning surges, we do the surge test. Then we also check for voltage dips and short interruptions and harmonics and flicker and so on. So the key tests in EMC which a designer needs to rather keep the designer needs to consider initially is the ESD test, the surge test, the radiated emissions test, and the radiated immunity test. These are the critical tests which commonly fail for most of the devices. So it is better to do some sort of a pre-compliance testing during the design phase itself to avoid the failure in the later stages. Then I am going to safety testing. Safety essentially means this electrical, mechanical, and thermal as per IEC 60601-1 standard. This is the main standard for safety for medical electrical equipment. The Indian version is IS 13450-1, which is the Indian BIS version. Essentially, it is the same. And for home care equipment, you have a different additional standard, which is IEC 60601-1-11. And the tests, typically the common tests which we do are the high pot test, high voltage test, leakage current test. There are different types of leakage current in a medical device. And then there is a specific test which is known as the defibrillator proof applied parts test, which means, let us say an ECG machine is there. If you are using a defibrillator on the patient when the ECG machine is connected, usually the normal ECGs, they don't work. So it has to be designed in such a way that you can use a defibrillator on the patient while this device is connected to the patient. So basically it has to be tested to withstand the pulse from the defibrillator. Another very crucial test is the flame test. So specifically there is a clause 11.2 which is related to flammability in 60601. So most of the devices which use oxygen or work in an oxygen rich environment should not cause any fire or explosion. That is one of the major reasons. And specifically for all the ICU equipment like anesthesia machines or ventilators or oxygen concentrators and so on, this is very important. As you know, oxygen is the key enabler of any fire. It is required to generate fire. And specifically inside an ICU, you have cotton, you have oxygen, and especially if cotton is present in a high oxygenated environment, it is a fire hazard. And again, one thing to keep in mind is most of these disposable tubes which are used in the ICU or in any hospital, all of them have to be biocompatible. And what it means is, and typically most of the biocompatible materials are highly flammable also. So there is a trade-off between for the designer to choose between biocompatibility and flammability. If you are going to choose plastics which are non-flammable, essentially they will not be biocompatible. So there is always a trade-off. And then on the bottom, on the left, you can see something known as a vibration shaker. So this you test for vibration and shock to check its performance. Specifically, these tests are required for devices which are designed to be used in an ambulance or in a non-clinical setting. Then one of the key tests in the medical device standards, as I had said earlier, is the alarms tests. So these tests are again performed in what is known as a hemi-anechoic chamber. In the previous case, there were RF absorbers. Here you have got these acoustic absorbers, but essentially the concept is same. There here also the floor is a reflecting surface, and these acoustic wedges, they absorb the sound waves. And the key difference is the sound is essentially a mechanical wave, whereas the EMC or electromagnetic wave or the RF wave is an electromagnetic wave. That's all. And here this acoustic and this sound limits are very stringent. So one has to do these A-weighted sound power measurement and C-weighted sound power measurement for most of the devices. And for most devices used, they have in their particular standard also, there are very stringent acoustic requirements. So for any designer, specifically when you are, let's say somebody is making a robot, some sort of assistive robot or some sort of a pump or some sort of, let's say, an X-ray machine which has some sort of a cart or wheels, then these kind of acoustic tests are very crucial, because again in most of the hospitals and most of the ICUs, these limits are very stringently defined. So again, this is the big elephant in the room, specifically for the Indian industry. As we know, for good or bad, India has multiple regulators. Let us say in US, there is a single US FDA. In India, we have got a Bureau of Indian Standards. We have got our drug regulator, which is a CDSCO. Then again, you have got MeitY, Ministry of Electronics, which controls the spectrum. Atomic Energy Regulatory Board controls the devices which release ionizing radiation. So due to various factors, Indian medical device regulation is not yet it is becoming stringent. It is stringent already, but a lot of devices are non-regulated. So this actually forces people to look for other standards. So recently, as I think Abhishek has mentioned, that this EU MDR, right? So the Europe, they have changed their, they have introduced the new medical device regulations, EU MDR. So this is going to significantly impact the entire Indian medtech industry, because most of our manufacturers cannot yet qualify for US FDA, and if they instead of and if they cannot even qualify for EU MDR, then our industry is in a serious trouble. So this is the most critical thing facing our industry in the near term. And again, the second key challenge is for the standards which I referred to, or the tests which I referred to, they were common for all devices. But as you know, each device is different, just like all humans, right? And there are about more than 5,000 categories of medical devices with their own unique testing protocols and unique so on and so forth. So here I have just illustrated 9 devices which are part of diagnostic radiology. So on the bottom right, you have the Humble Dental X-ray, and on the top center, you have the cath lab. So from dental X-ray to cath lab, everything falls under diagnostic radiology, whether it is OPG or cone beam CT or bone mineral density BMD or mammography or C-arm or a typical X-ray or CT and so on. But each one has a different requirement. So that is a crucial factor, and each one has a particular IEC or ISO standard. So why I have put this slide is, uh, as an inventor, whenever you try to invent something or come up with a new device, please ensure it's that you read its particular standard first. Because if you are coming up with a device, let us say, which is both a some sort of a dental X-ray and a mammogram, right? If somebody comes up with a device which is both a mammogram as well as a dental X-ray, then it will not fall in either standard. So there is no pathway for its approval. So in that case, one has to test it both for mammography standard as well as a dental X-ray standard. So it may be a very unique device, but one has to test for both the standards and its regulatory process, or the entire process. Like let us say, normally if the device is taking 3 to 4 years to develop, the timeline is just doubled. So it will now take 6 to 7 years. So if you are coming up with radically new innovations, then that is it will cause its own issues. But it's not that invention is discouraged, but just to be aware of the challenges. That is the thing. And again, just like any law, there are a lot of legal loopholes. That is why these regulatory consultants and all, they are all highly paid, specifically for USFDA and so on. So this is also, since most of you are like uh, training to be physicians, and I hope some of you, rather most of you, hope to be exported, and they will end up maybe in US or Europe or somewhere, since JDA Medical College is very prestigious. So again, a lot of these medical legal cases in US are handled again by physicians, those whose first degree was MBBS. So a lot of people who study MBBS in India go on to become regulatory advisors to FDA and so on and so forth in US. And even if you look, so that's also one possible career option also. So I recently interacted with someone from US FDA who is again of Indian origin, and there are a lot of physicians and a lot of engineers there also. So just the way I'm saying. And in India also, this regulatory field is booming. So in future, the government will come up with new regulations. So that was it, my presentation, and this is our address. We are located at Sector 3 Manesar, which is part of NCR, and any and all of you are most welcome to visit us and see our labs at any time. And any questions, anyone? So we are open to questions. And so I think the questions are in chat box, right?
I'll just check, so one second.
Okay, there isn't many medical, many designers and engineers too. Yes, so even for engineers and designers also. So usually, one thing in our Indian education system is there are not many people who are both engineers and physicians. That is one of the unique thing in India. Whereas most of the medical device inventors abroad, specifically when I was studying in my masters, my professors were both kind of physicians and engineers. That was quite common. So this is one thing which maybe in the next generation or like someone like you have to propose. So we are still divided into these engineers and physicians kind of thing, but actually it's all very porous. Yes.
They can you guys can ask your questions directly, or you can put it
Uh-huh.
in the chat. So there are
Yeah.
questions are not there as well, but you can unmute yourself and ask those questions directly if you have any.
Anything? Nothing? Okay. Then I think I'll just briefly show the standards also. If
I
there are
think
no questions, I'll just
Soham,
wait.
yeah, there is
Yes.
one question from Soham. Go ahead, Soham.
Sir, uh, can you just show us like ISO standards which are for durability and resistance, like testing the object? So how you said about CAE testing.
Huh?
So why? So if I'm making my first prototype, what are the ISO standards for testing, or what
For testing,
standard should my
what
device?
device is it? Which device is it?
So basically, sir, we are working on a prosthetic limb, and
Okay,
it has
so
to be
prosthetic limb.
subjected
So
to
essentially, I
certain
will show
loads
that. So,
and
huh.
so I just wanted to know like how the testing is taken place and what are the parameters and what are the standards
Yes.
according to.
1 second, please. I'll just
Yes.
prosthetic limb. I
Sure.
can directly show. So I can actually show it. I can directly show it here itself. So this is 1 second. So just a minute, this standard will open. This is the standard for the, I think you are able, I'll just minimize. This is a standard for, let us say, medical robotics for rehabilitation, compensation, and elevation. So prosthetic limbs, it will not apply. It's a simpler standard. So I think it is this, yes, you can see, right? ISO 22523, right? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So are
Yes,
you
I
able to
can.
hear? So this is the standard for the prosthetic limbs. So the next stage from the prosthetic limbs, you have got these kind of medical robots, right? This exoskeleton and all. If you have to, the prosthetic limb is a very small device. If you are entirely designing the entire exoskeleton and so on, you have to go for this ISO 80601-2-78. Now, this standard, this is the key performance testing standard or the particular standard for that device. If you refer to this standard, all the other standards which I talked, right, they will be referred as
Mhm.
normative references in this standard.
Okay, sir.
So for
So one more
prosthetic
thing,
limbs, right?
as you
Prosthetic limbs,
as
you will
you
have the standard is ISO 22523. If you open ISO 22523, it will again refer back to that electrical safety standard and the EMC standard and so on and so
yes,
forth.
sir, yes.
So so everything will be covered in this.
Yes, sir. So one more small thing I would wanted to ask, because when we were doing a research, as you said, ki prosthetic is a small part, but recently when I was doing the research, I found this ISO standard known as ISO 8548,
Okay.
which is for upper prosthetics and orthotics, upper limb and lower limb prosthetics. Like it is covering both. But
Hmm.
I wasn't able to access it because again it was like showing this buy option. Like if I wanted to buy the whole paper, I need to pay for that. So
Yes,
that
but
was
one
one concern.
crucial thing is, so you before deciding on the particular standard, just make sure that it's a scope. So the first part in any standard is it's a scope. So that scope is usually free. The preview is available for free. So once you read the scope, just like what I read now, right, you will come to know which is the appropriate standard. And if required, like you see the scope, the first part is the scope. So I'm just reading one standard, and the scope part is usually free. And by reading the scope, one has to decide which is the applicable standard. And another thing is, if there is a device similar to it, what is the standard for that? So what was the standard you mentioned? ISO?
Uh, so, sir, it was like there were multiple standards. So, first was ISO 8548, and it
Okay.
had 123, and then again 48549,
So all
again
these
one
will
two
be
three
for slight
subdomains.
deviation. So for example, if you see,
Yes, sir.
all these are legal terms like the external limb prosthetic devices. They use a certain thing. So this would be a different kind of prosthetic. But there are very rare cases when the standards overlap. So whenever they overlap, I prefer the standard which is this IEC or ISO, the 60601 or 80601 series, specifically for the electromedical equipment. And if in case if you have this kind of doubt, you can send a mail to me. I have shown my email ID. I'll show it again, and then I'll go through it and I'll just recommend which one is the one.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Because these are all these are slightly, they are all deviations. So and the thing is, essentially, once you have know the standard, right, you can start your design accordingly. And I will just also briefly show some of these standards.
This.
Yes. So anything related to laboratory diagnostic devices comes under the category of IVDs, in vitro diagnostics, and may not be anything, but most of the things. And the standard for safety, again, the tests and the nature of the tests are mostly the same. The standard is IEC 61010-1. And specifically, let's say a simple centrifuge, again, that is there. But the nature of the test is same. For example, in a centrifuge also, one has to perform the acoustic test, because centrifuge also makes a lot of noise. And then again, for the EMC part, specifically for the instrumentation of that IVDs, again, the standard is different, but the tests are the same. Again, you have radiated emissions, radiated susceptibility, and so on. But the standard is IEC 61326-1 and IEC 61326-2-6, which is the EMC standard for IVD devices, in vitro diagnostic devices. So again, but the types of tests and the nature of the tests are same, mostly similar. Rather, the limits are different. That's all. But this
Yes, sir.
QMS, ISO 13485 and ISO 14971 risk management are common to both of them. They are common for both medical devices as well as this IVD instrumentation.
Okay. Sir, anything about biomedical waste as well? If you would like to speak about how biomedical waste management, there are a lot of devices that is coming in handling biomedical waste, especially used pipes or, used catheters and all those things. So how is this waste managed, and what kind of regulatory should we think about biomedical waste management?
Very good question. But strictly speaking, I guess they are not medical devices. So essentially, I will just say, so why? Because what is a medical device? I forgot to mention. So if you one second. So I will just, I just want to show the definition. It's defined. It's a very, one second. Yes, I think I missed it, or no, MS, yes, yes. One second, just a second. I'll get the definition. Yes. So this is a medical device. It is an instrument, apparatus, implement, machine, appliance, implant, reagent for in vitro use, and software, specifically software. So the device can be only software also. So it's an instrument, apparatus, implement, machine, appliance, implant, reagent for in vitro use, software, material, or other similar related article intended by manufacturer to be used alone or in combination for human beings for one or more of the specific purposes of diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, diagnosis, treatment, elevation or compensation of injury, investigation, replacement, modification, support of anatomy, supporting or sustaining life, control of conception, disinfection of medical devices, providing information by means of in vitro examination of specimen, and so on. So and it does not achieve its primary intended action by pharmacological, immunological or metabolic means, then it is a medical device. So the device which are used to handle biomedical waste are would not come under this category, is my understanding. But suppose there is a mechanism to disinfect the device, let us say some sort of reusable devices, then some sort of sterilizers and all, then they are used, then they would come under medical device because they are used for disinfection. But if you are going to dispose the device, right, in that case it is not a medical device, and the rules will be the local whatever pollution control board or whatever they will recommend. So in that way biomedical waste will have its own rules. So they are the thing. And here one thing to be noted is that the even there also there are the most of the rules, they are different according to different geographies, because it is not the nature of the device, but it is basically the waste handling and all is like a depends on the local governments and their norms. So in certain countries the rules are very relaxed, and in certain countries the rules are very stringent. Of course all biomedical waste is a huge problem, and that has to be tackled well. That is a different issue, but that doesn't come strictly under the definition of a medical device.
Sir, also I would like to ask, so there are a lot of devices and softwares coming up in the mental health and brain related areas. So what kind of categories do they come under specifically?
So there are a lot
Software.
of these kind of device software and apps which are not under device category yet, right? But specifically because our IEC 62304 doesn't is not very stringent. But the next edition of the medical device software, right, it will cover the entire health software. Health means then in that case most of the apps related to healthcare will fall under regulation. Currently it's as you said correctly, a diagnosis is very loosely defined. So suppose if there is an app which is measuring your BP or something in the phone, it strictly is not a medical device. But if, or if it is measuring just like pulse oximeter, no, there are apps which even measure the SpO2 concentration, but they are not strictly a medical device. But and specifically in India we don't have any regulation. But if some physician is using the result and diagnosing for diagnosis, then obviously it is as per definition, but again that is a gray area. But all these things will be fixed in the next edition of IEC 62304, which is edition 2, which is due, and once it comes all these things will be addressed. And one crucial part here in the medical device definition, you would have noticed that the devices which are used on other areas, let's say animals, are not covered. But in future, they will also be added, because there are a lot of veterinary devices like veterinary instrumentation, X-rays, and so on. They also will be added in the next editions. Yes, go on, sir.
IC meaning international. Does it mean international standards, sir? IC meaning,
It
or
is
those are
International Electrotechnical Commission.
okay? Okay, sir.
So mostly these are all electrical standards. So they are, it is a sister organization of ISO. ISO and IEC essentially are same. So that is why, but they are International Electrotechnical Commission is the format.
Sir.
And there are certain things here. This is just for like someone to know. I am saying. So these European countries, they are known as CNELEC, CNNELEC or something. So this is a French abbreviation. So a lot of these abbreviations are French, and like this word, na, CNELEC, CENELEC. So these are all French abbreviations, but essentially what it means is these are the countries: Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, and so on. And now this UK is removed. So these are the countries. So and similarly, lot of in the standard there is one organization called CISPR, which is again a French acronym. So in that case, there is used for EMC standards and all. But otherwise, IEC is International Electrotechnical Commission. And India is also a member of that. So our BIS is the Indian representative. Bureau of Indian Standards is the Indian representative for IEC and ISO. So that is there. And BIS has many committees, and again this people from colleges and scientists and physicians and engineers and designers, they can attend those committees and they can become part of those committees. So one very crucial difference between industrialized countries and us is that there everyone is very involved with the standards. Here most of our academia is aloof from the standards, and they are not involved in developing the standards. So unless you are involved in editing or developing the standard, the industry of that country will not benefit. So this is another thing. And BIS meetings you can also attend. You can say that you are interested in this particular area. There are different subcommittees, let us say some anesthesiology, some hospital equipment and so on, and you can attend the meetings and give your suggestions, and then they will keep contacting you, and BIS will collate all the inputs from India, and then finally it will vote in the IEC. Whenever the voting happens in IEC, BIS will coordinate that activity.
Okay, sir. So I have one question from the chat, sir. Anselm is asking, so in their prototype, they might have to use acetone for one of their, steps. So does it require like a fire testing in that case?
I will have to check, but that stents will have mostly this equipment specifically. It requires fire test and all flammability, because there are components which get heated. So let us say you will have batteries and so on and so forth. But here you don't have any such thing, means it may not be required. So it depends on case to case basis. Again, if you look at that particular standard for the stent or some drug eluting stent, then you will come to know about it. And this is not my area, but I can say for one thing for sure. Just like for medical electrical equipment, you have got these ISO and ISO standards. For implants, most of the standards are like technically they come from ASTM standards. So this ASTM F04, this committee is one second, I'll just.
These are for implants, right, sir?
Yes, ASTM makes this. This is an organization which stood for some metallurgy, American, something like that. So,
Okay.
but now ASTM is no full form. There is no full form. So, for specifically for implants and stents and so on and so forth, hip implant or shoulder implant and all, this ASTM committee F04, it comes up with these standards for them, the particular standard. So, it is not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is only electrical equipment. But just if somebody is into biomaterials and implants, it will be useful for them. So this is the thing. So this ASTM F04, you can look at the list of subcommittees, standards, and so on. So again, you have got these kind of things. You have got orthopedic devices, medical surgical devices, tissue engineered medical product, polymeric products, metallurgical products, ceramic products. This one for osteosynthesis, and so on and so forth. And this ASTM 04.33 is for different kinds of medical and surgical instruments, which is again a very huge area. So there are, as you know, physicians, someone from physician background, they will know, like, when you will do your MD or MS, if you become, let's say, some even orthopedician or something, there are a lot of instruments you have to remember, right? So all of them have their own, some, let's say, some Foley catheter or some sort of different kinds of, instruments. So each field has its own categories of instruments. So this is a very large subsection. And one of the India is one of the leading manufacturer of medical and surgical instruments. So these all are in this area. So just like you have got ISO and IEC for the technical, or rather electromedical standards, you have got ASTM for this. And these standards are used by organizations such as FDA and different bodies to come up with their own regulations.
Sure, sir. So I had one related question, which one aspect we were also talking about. So, studying about these regulatory or, these standards can be a challenge at some point of time. So can you share, with us some one or two case studies, where the knowledge of that standard or, that regulation helped the particular involved startup or company to accelerate their product the same deployment or related something like that. So can you, if possible for you, can you just share one case study?
I can do that. Okay, one second, I will just open. So I can take up the example of ventilators. So ventilator standards are all free during COVID, right? ISO has made them free. So I can show them also. There is nothing wrong about it. So this is the ISO website for COVID-19 response. They have made all these standards freely available. So what I want to show here is there are about 5 or six types of ventilators legally or rather defined as per standards. The first standard is this ISO 80601-2-12, which is for the critical care ventilator, which is to be used in an ICU and when you are intubating a patient and so on, which is an invasive ventilator. Again, the second category of ventilator is this 80601-2-13, which is the anesthesia ventilator, which is the ventilator which is present in the anesthetic workstation. Then you have got this simple sleep apnea breathing, which is your nothing but your CPAP or BiPAP machine, which is used in almost every home. You can nowadays find that. And similarly, the lowest end of ventilator is for a device which is for some sort of ventilatory support and equipment ventilatory insufficiency. And then the next category is ventilatory impairment. The next category is a transport ventilator, dash 84, and so on and so forth. So this critical care ventilator, the tests are a superset, and the humble BiPAP or CPAP requires a lot of little kind of tests. So I have observed that a lot of companies, they tried to make the critical care ventilator abroad and in India, so on and so forth, and they called their product as ventilator. So the moment you call your product as ventilator, everyone thinks it is a critical care ventilator to be used by some, brilliant pulmonologist, maybe at AIMS or JJ Hospital or so on. So then what happens is they expect the same parameters, but it need not be true. There can be a simple automated ambu bag which has its own relevance. So one company, instead of calling its product as a critical care ventilator, started saying that its device is this dash 80 ventilator, uh, which is a device for so-called ventilatory insufficiency. So here again, if you read the scope, this device is can be used by device is intended for use in home care environment. It is intended for use by a lay operator. It is intended for use by patients who have ventilatory insufficiency or failure, the most fragile of which would likely experience injury with the loss of artificial ventilation and so on and so forth. But this is a very low end device. So by selectively targeting the standard, they were able to get most of the regulatory approvals. So this is one crucial example. So whereas the devices which went for which called their product as a crucial critical care ventilator, they could not meet all the approvals because the requirements are much more stringent. So here it is a very clever way to define your product as per the it's where it falls, and it's very important because, as I said, there is some standard for prosthetic limbs, there is another standard for something called a medical robot, and then there is another standard for a surgical robot, let us say a Da Vinci robot, then there is another standard. So if you are defining your device into a very stringent category, the chances of it obtaining regulatory approvals are very less. So one can build its cases. So at first you can say, okay, my device is just a device for ventilatory insufficiency. Then you can slowly build on and build and finally reach the stage of the critical care ventilator. So I hope I was clear, or was it confusing, or how was it?
It was perfect. Guys, if you feel any doubts or something,
Hello?
you can ask. Hello. Hello.
So it's very important. So this is like law. Regulation is engineering or science plus law, and the way in which you name or call your device is very important.
Sure, sir. And
Any further
there is one
questions?
more. Yes, sir. There is one more question. Regulations with regards to the spectroscopy for the purpose of vein detection. So standards for vein detectors. Are you aware about
Okay.
standardization referred to?
So vein detector, as I said in the definition of ISO 13485 for a medical device, that is a medical device because it is used for diagnosis. And again, I don't know anything about vein detection, but I'm just thinking if the intended use is, it is mostly for this neonatal and infants, right?
So okay. If you can take that case and then maybe give a relevant for some other
Okay,
age
so let
also.
us say, let us say this vein detection is to be used for infants. Then there will be an additional requirement. So as such, it is a medical device. So I am not exactly familiar with its particular standard, but again, all these things will be applicable. It is an electromedical device, so 60601-1 will be applicable. There will be some sort of EMC generated. I don't think it will have any kind of alarm typically, but some sort of visual alarm will be be there, and then this ISO 13485 and risk management and everything is applicable for that also. And specifically, since the device vein detector, if it is to be used in neonates, the requirements are much more stringent than for a device which is to be used in adults. Similar is the case with ventilator also. So the requirements for neonatal ventilators are much more stringent, as naturally it is expected, than adult ventilator.
I hope that answers your question, Omkar.
Also, sir, you were talking about visual alarms.
Yes.
So can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Like, are there again certain standards which we have to follow to add a particular alarm? Like, basically, we have a something which is a like a diagnostic system.
Okay.
So which
So
will use a
diagnostic system, is it a medical device or an IVD?
no, it is again inside the prosthetic arm. If something is wrong, like a battery indicator or something like that, or plus
Okay,
again,
okay,
if
okay.
there is a
So again, the
malfunctioning
standard for
software.
medical alarms is the same. It is IEC
Sir, I'm
IEC
talking about visual
60601-1-8, but there is a clause for visual alarms. So I will
alarm.
mention maybe separately. If you can mail me, I will clarify that and I'll send that extract of that clause. So
Sure,
that
sir.
will give you the requirement for the visual alarms.
Yeah. Thank you.
Uh, so we can take one last question before we sign off. Guys, if
Sure.
you have any other questions, please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. Anyone? All right, sir. I think so.
Okay.
Can you just
So I'll
share
just,
your?
I think I'll 1 second. I'll just
Yes, sir.
maybe at the end of my presentation, I'll just share my email. Na? So maybe I think you already have it, but if someone doesn't have, this is my email ID. You can reach out to me and I'll respond. Maybe after 2-3 days, but at some point of time, I'll definitely respond. And if you have any doubts in regulatory affairs, that is not a problem. And all of you, and if possible, if you could kindly request Dr. Malpani sir also, they are most welcome to visit ICAT anytime. Nowadays it is COVID time, so maybe you may not be traveling, but whenever you resume the regular activities, you are most welcome.
Definitely, sir. Actually, I think yeah, we'll definitely make that visit, sir.
So thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful session. Actually, I met Dr. Venkatramana sir in AMTZ when he was working there. So he very well kindly took me around the entire campus and showed me the entire AMTZ, and it was like a huge knowledge coming from a source who's personally done a lot of things in his life. And thank you so much, sir. Got a lot of insights about ISO standards, regulations, and features for electromedical devices, and in fact, even more things about testing, because many times while following the design process, we forget about the testing and we don't design for the test. Rather than we have to go in the testing phase and then change it. But thank you so much, sir, for sharing it very well.
Absolutely correct, Krishnaji. Very nice to interact with you, and thanks for organizing this session. And just like since you are from mechanical engineering design background, just like you have this design for manufacturing, this design for compliance or design for these tests is also very crucial.
Absolutely.
And this can save crucial about up to 2 to 3 years in the entire cycle. That I can say confidently.
Correct. So that's the very reason that we organized this session for all of you.
It would be a pleasure, and all the best to you. And you are the younger generation, so I think I'm very I feel very happy interacting with you because there is so much enthusiasm, and I'm sure something very great will come out of MICE. I think in